Great, Carson. Thanks so much. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for attending this afternoon. Hope you all are doing well and staying safe. Today's webinar is on strategies to identify low-cost energy improvements in your multifamily property. I lead our work with commercial real estate and multifamily sectors. Joined today by our expert panelists, Lexi Goldberg, who's the Director of Sustainability with Greystar Real Estate Partners, and Pete Zadoretsky, who's VP Sustainability with Bizzuto Management Company. So for agenda, we sort of have two parts to the session today. The first part will be presentations from myself and the speakers. I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of the Energy Star program for multifamily, some of the resources that we have available, and those that sort of cater to the low and no cost improvements. And then I'll pass it to Lexi and Pete, who will give an overview of what they've done with their organizations to address energy efficiency as well as some of the Energy Star resources that they found valuable. Second portion will be a little bit of a discussion and audience Q&A. I will have a moderated discussion with our panelists for a few minutes, but then any questions that come in, again, as Carson mentioned, you can submit them through the chat. At that point, I will read the questions that we received and have our panelists answer that. So a quick overview of the Energy Star program for multifamily housing. Going back to why we're actually looking at buildings and plants, across sort of all categories that Energy Star covers, we look for a couple of things. One is where we have opportunities to help encourage change in the market to increase energy efficiency and reduce the impact on the environment. But we would only do something if there was an opportunity there. In commercial buildings, there is certainly an opportunity. On average, we found that about 30% of energy in commercial buildings is wasted, and by wasted I mean sort of inefficiencies in the building. Either that's through operations and maintenance inefficiencies, the building isn't really being run how it should be run, lights are being left on when they shouldn't be left on, things like that, or equipment is either inefficient or needs repairs. The whole concept of sort of retro-commissioning is to look at a building and make sure it's running as intended, which you would hope would naturally happen, but does not happen very often. So there's certainly an opportunity to address this inefficiency. And then as we go and look towards low and no cost, over the years we've seen about 10% can be achieved sort of very not say simply, but with very little resources behind it. These tend to be sort of the low-hanging fruit, those along the operations maintenance, things that while there is an effort that needs to have to get a handle on this to understand where you're wasting energy, we're not really talking about major capital expenditures here. So that type of potential can really help to reduce your energy usage and improve the bottom line and net operating income, because it's very controllable once you have an understanding of where to look and what to do. The Energy Star program as a whole, it's a voluntary program that EPA has run for many years now, going back to the mid-90s. On the building side, we have a few different areas which we touch. The first is we try to develop tools and resources that help owners and managers of commercial buildings understand how they're actually performing. So the buildings program is performance-based, and in order to address that, we've developed some different tools and resources that help people understand where where their property is, how much energy you're using, how they compare to others. The primary way we do that is through a free online software platform called Energy Star Portfolio Manager. Anyone can go in and set up a property in there, start tracking their energy usage, and see how they're doing over time. And they can look at how their property is being compared to other properties in their portfolio, or through the use of the Energy Star score, they can understand how their property compares against an average property with similar characteristics. Our scoring model is a 1 to 100 score that normalizes for differences in business activity, things like climate and weather and where you're in the country, and square footage, so that when you get a score, you have an understanding of how your property stacks up against an average property. There are a number of other metrics there, depending on what you want to look at, and Energy Star Portfolio Manager also has sort of a reporting system where you can pull things out and use that to better understand it. That sort of gets at where you should look, understanding where your buildings are. That helps you sort of target, what buildings may be operating inefficiently, what buildings may be operating efficiently, where you can look at potential best practices, but doesn't really tell you what to do. We have a number of other resources that tends to get at that. So we have a suite of financial calculators that you can input things about a specific project and look at payback. We have marketing and communications resources, which help communicate efficiency and what you're trying to do to either internal or external audiences. We also have a number of service and product provider partners that have partnered with the program that actually go do work on facilities to improve the energy efficiency there. Recent years, their sort of scope of what they cover has sort of exploded. They help with benchmarking, with a lot of the mandatory benchmarking ordinances out there these days in a number of cities around the country. They assist with that. And they also assist with Energy Star certification, which is our third way of offering sort of value to the market. The Energy Star label is recognized by almost everyone in the country as a symbol of energy efficiency. Primarily that's understood with efficient products. We also have the label for buildings as well that serves the same purpose, which is identifying top performers in the industry. Now, moving on to low and no-cost energy improvements. The first resource I want to mention is the Guidelines for Energy Management. Now, this is a sort of entry-level resource. When you go and you try to become an Energy Star partner, we actually have this in there that recommends this should be your first step. This is a list of best practices that we've got from the commercial real estate industry of how to go about establishing an energy management program. It sort of follows similar to sort of a project management process where you start by understanding where you are, you set goals, and then you implement your plans. And as you're doing that, you're gathering feedback and understanding how things are working so that you can reassess and start over again. As you can see, it's a circle. This is a continuous improvement model. And why this fits really well with the sort of low and no cost element is when we're talking about capital projects, you're likely not doing those every year. Even with a lighting upgrade, while there are some changes in technology out there and you may have fixtures you need to fix that broke down, usually you're doing a lighting upgrade on a building and you're having that pay off over multiple years. Same goes for other large capital projects and big kind of improvements in equipment. When we talk about low and no cost elements, that really fits well with this continuous improvement plan. Things like operations and maintenance are an everyday sort of challenge. Over time, you have staff turnover, you have changes in sort of technology, changes the way the building is being run, changes within the building. So you need some sort of system to constantly analyze and reflect on and improve your property. So this guideline, I think, really helps understand how to implement a system where you can not only maintain a high level of performance and achieve those goals, but improve performance over time. I don't know of any boss that says, improve this year and then you do it and then you can take the next year off. Everyone's always looking for continuous improvement, so a system that addresses that is highly valuable. As an extension of this, a document that I will sort of foreshadow here that we're currently developing that can be used in conjunction is Guidelines for Excellence in Energy Management in Multifamily Housing. A lot of this has similar elements to the Guidelines for Energy Management. For some pieces, it doesn't go as in-depth, but for others, it expands on how this impacts multifamily housing. Really, the purpose is to outline key components of a successful approach to energy management and where Energy Star resources can be used to assist along the way. It covers developing energy management teams, different communication tactics, and within those, the resources that are available that you can try. In terms of making improvements to buildings for low and no cost energy efficiency measures, we sort of have a recommended order of operations. The first one, I've said it a few times, operations and maintenance is your low-hanging fruit. The building, you don't have to make any changes to it, really. You're just looking at how you're running the building and things you can change, things that are easy, as if lights are being left on in common areas all through the night when no one's using it. Maybe some of your residents want to use it in the middle of the night, but chances are that there's opportunities for savings. Certainly controls can help with that. Low-hanging fruit there. Lighting, I think everyone sort of universally agrees, is the best bang for your buck. It's also one of the easier efficiency measures to understand. Replacing a 1 wattage lamp with a lower wattage is fairly simple math, and then you can run the numbers on return with your hours of operation to understand what that payback is. And with lighting, certainly with advances in technologies, efficient fluorescents, but more so LEDs are the way to go in terms of efficiency and long-lasting lifetime. The payback is very, very quick. So those should be your first priorities, and then you can get into things like plug load and the equipment there. And then finally on equipment, heating and cooling we recommend would be sort of the last thing to look at. The reason being that heating and cooling, you're sizing for the building and you're sort of sizing for a given demand on the building, and you really should size that appropriately after you've taken other measures. You don't want to oversize the building because you haven't implemented other changes there for your heating and cooling system. And then additional things to look at are communication, education. That's trainings for internal staff, site staff, but also residents. Residents increasingly care more about this stuff, and they want to contribute, and they use a lot of energy in the building. So simple messaging can help get that across. And then finally, outside help. I think I mentioned our service and product providers out there that will help along the ways and help prioritize activities. And then finally, one resource that I want to talk about that will come up during Lexi and Pete's talk is this concept called an Energy Star Treasure Hunt. So an Energy Star Treasure Hunt is sort of a do-it-yourself energy audit, and it's very, very different than an audit. First and foremost, I don't know anyone that really likes to be audited for any reason whatsoever. So it sort of takes a positive spin on that. And instead of having an outside party come in, do an audit and give you a big booklet of recommended resources, while a lot of that can be helpful, it also can be very intimidating when someone else comes in and you're a site manager and you're getting someone to evaluate your work and point out problems. It doesn't make you very comfortable with it. You also may not be very forthcoming about things that you can improve if it's external. Then you start Treasure Hunt sort of takes a collaborative approach at looking at that. Treasure Hunts have been actually around for a long time. It was pioneered and developed by Toyota, actually, in the manufacturing world and widely used in industrial settings. And if anyone knows Toyota, they sort of pride themselves on scientific process improvements as well as leveraging their employees. So the Treasure Hunt is a reflection of that. It's a sort of proven method to go about finding opportunities that leverages employees. And what they saw was that as they got more employees involved and site staff involved, a few things happened. One, the opportunities that they found were implemented more. Having sort of boots on the ground, identify things, they can take ownership of projects and better understand them, and they'll probably find more opportunities because they're the ones that know the building best. But they also developed a sort of sense of community and involvement. And treasure hunts tend to involve a number of different individuals from the organization, financial folks, property managers, maintenance staff. And the reason being, you want to have sort of a collaborative approach to have the same mindset of improving here. It's about opportunities, not about finding problems. And with that, we've seen people have a lot of fun with this. On the industrial side, it's been adopted sort of widely on the hospital. Our hospital sector has used this widely and has been used in commercial setting where we developed resources last year, and then I'm looking to promote that. So we'll get into that in a little bit in more detail. Finally, some additional resources. We have a multifamily homepage, energystar.gov/multifamily, which has a lot of this information on there. There's information on hosting energy or water competitions, really to get people more involved in this. We have some communications tactics that sort of go through the season. You can see these images there. That's Bob the Building, where you can use Bob or not use Bob, but he is our building mascot. But tips and tricks that you can either share the concepts or use these resources directly to communicate to residents or to staff of what they can do to improve the efficiency of the building. I already touched on some of our calculators that are available to understand that. So all that's available on our Greystar homepage. So with that, I will turn it over to Lexi, who will continue through the presentation and talk to us about what's going on with Greystar.
Thanks, Craig. And thank you all for being on today. I know Pete and I are both really excited to answer some questions and just kind of go through a high-level overview of how we work throughout our organizations to identify low and no-cost opportunities across our properties. So obviously, I'm Lexi Goldberg. I lead our sustainability efforts across our global business. And really today, I just want to quickly go through kind of a high-level overview of Greystar in case anyone's not familiar with them, and then also dig into a little bit of just our overall sustainability program before really diving into our most common path for identifying opportunities and a little more on Energy Star treasure hunts. With that, let me try to change the slide. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. So this is Greystar. We are a global leader in rental housing. We focus primarily on traditional multifamily, student, and active adults. We're a fully integrated firm, so we own, manage, and develop communities. We currently operate in 13 countries and manage 2,500 communities totaling over 693,000 units, which serves approximately 1.5 million residents. So with that, we obviously have a huge footprint that we constantly need to look at and figure out how can we reduce our overall footprint and really drive down consumption. So with our sustainability program and really all programs across Greystar, it's really critical that we can scale our efforts and repeat what we're doing so that it doesn't matter whether we're in California looking at a property or we're in China looking at a property for improvements. So this is one area, especially across our program, identifying opportunities. It's pretty standardized. But before we dig into that, just quickly going through some of the high-level buckets of what we're focusing on. So the first one is around our design and development standards. So over the last couple of years, we've been developing global design standards, really just to, again, standardize what our product is. And as part of this, really integrating sustainability into this. So it's not only having the standards in place, but also, of course, making sure that they're followed and that we're sticking with them and following through with what we kind of promised to our capital partners and just to our organization overall. And I would say a really important piece for us in the development phase and design phase is making sure that we have a design for management approach, and we're not just thinking about what products we're using in the building or what systems we're going to install, or even what certification we may be going for, but really thinking beyond that and thinking, how is this building going to operate? Is it actually going to be efficient as we expect it to be? And will we be able to pull data from it? So with that, kind of the next piece is, of course, making sure we have tools and resources in place to ensure operational efficiency. So really making sure that our on-site team members are empowered to improve the efficiency of their buildings year over year, whether it's through identifying opportunities or just managing the buildings correctly, which can kind of go hand in hand. And then the third bucket is really partnering with our innovation team, which looks a lot different today than it did even 6 months ago, but making sure that sustainability is embedded into this, both on kind of identifying technologies that may have a sustainability focus, but also making sure that we're looking at technologies that we can pull data from. And you'll hear me say data probably a million times throughout this presentation because it really is kind of the central point of our entire program. So this next bucket is what I'm going to focus on the most. So really making sure that we are identifying opportunities to improve our efficiency across the board. So this is both at the asset level, but also at the portfolio level, and then ultimately at the organizational level, and holding ourselves accountable. And I would say a really important piece to this is having objectives in place. I think anyone who has a sustainability program that is really focused on the data and improving the footprint, objectives are just an incredible tool to make sure that you are going the right direction and, again, to hold yourself accountable. And then the final piece that's really critical to our program, and it ties back into identifying opportunities, is engagement. So engaging our teams on site, obviously, and all of our team members, but also, like Craig was saying, really engaging our residents and making sure that we're listening to them and also educating them and providing resources to them so that they can live more sustainably. And then, of course, we also have to partner with and engage with our capital partners, our clients, and even our vendors. So really to kind of dig into the meat of this, energy efficiency, I would say, is one of the cornerstones to our program. And we're consistently trying to drive down consumption as well as identify opportunities that will reduce our footprint. And like I mentioned on the last slide, the number one starting point of this is having access to data. So making sure you have a place to collect your data, monitor it, benchmark it, and just consistently be able to measure and report on that is huge. So this is an area where something like Energy Star Portfolio Manager is an incredible tool that allows you to have everything all in one place and even able to benchmark not only against your own portfolios or properties, but against all of the properties within Energy Star Portfolio Manager through that Energy Star score. So once you have the data in place, there are several ways to kind of identify what properties you want to look at for efficiency opportunities. I would say most often across Greystar, it's really identifying the high users. So these could be high users, again, in a specific portfolio, high users that clients have asked us to look at, or just high users in comparison to that Energy Star score. You can, of course, look at this many different ways, whether you just want to find opportunities for efficiency improvements or see if there are any available, or even kind of going back to the objectives piece that I talked about. But most often, we're looking for high users. And once we've identified a property or a set of properties, we really go to that next step of engaging stakeholders. So you can obviously, like Craig said, you can have kind of a third-party provider go out and do an audit of your property, or through tools like the treasure hunt, you can bring this internal and really do an internal assessment of how your property is performing. But there are other stakeholders that need to be involved in the process, and this, of course, includes our on-site teams, both on the operations and maintenance side, and then maybe other people throughout the organization. So it could be regional leaders, it could be asset management, or it could be someone from your sustainability team. It's really whatever is going to help make this process and the project successful. So really the next steps are pretty straightforward. You walk the property, you identify what opportunities there are for improvement, and then essentially once you have those in place, then you can present those opportunities. And typically the way we do it at Greystar is we'll identify what opportunities we have, attach the ROI to those projects, and then present them to whatever team we need to. It's usually at least partially the same team that we engaged initially, but there may be some additional decision makers that we want to bring into the process as well. And then from there, obviously, once you have approval, you can implement the measures, and then it kind of goes full circle, like that slide that we saw when Craig was speaking. But really, the data never stops. Once you implement a project, you need to make sure that you're continuing to measure the outcomes of that project and hopefully be able to report on the success. And it really is an ongoing process. Like Craig mentioned, there are some opportunities that are maybe larger in cost that you're only going to do once during the hold of an asset, but there are other opportunities that you can look at year over year and just make sure that your building is truly operating as efficiently as possible. So while there's a time and a place to have a third party conduct a building audit, this definitely isn't always necessary, nor is it always included in our budgets each year. So there are some great resources that we've already kind of gone through, and the one I'm going to focus on is treasure hunt, because I think this is one of the best ways that we can be empowered internally to have the resources to identify those no and low cost efficiency measures and really make our properties perform better. So it follows a very similar guideline to the diagram I had on the last page and the chart we saw on Craig's slides. But the first step is really kind of prepping for the treasure hunt. So identifying the site or sites that you want to walk, identifying any materials that you need to have on hand for that walk, and then identifying which stakeholders and assembling them so that they can be present in the whole process. And then from there, you really bring everyone together, your stakeholder group, and you go through just kind of an overview of what the treasure hunt will look like. You can talk about details on the site, really familiarize them with what the process is and what the site is looking like, how it's performing today, And then ultimately, this is a really great time to present the objective of the treasure hunt, which is really to identify and quantify energy savings. So this isn't a kind of process to pull out what's not being done right on site or make this into a negative or blame game. But this is really an opportunity to spin it in a positive light, saying we are doing everything we can, but there's always room for improvement, and making sure that everyone in that stakeholder group knows that. And then from here, you can move on to the actual hunt, which is kind of broken up into two phases. So the first one is, of course, actually walking the site. And there are, again, really amazing resources like this one on the slide, which I know is hard to see, but free resources that are available that you can actually print out, put on a clipboard, and walk around the site and check things off and write your own notes. And then essentially at the end of that, compile all of the information. And the second phase kind of the hunt is presenting all of your findings to that initial stakeholder group again. And then finally, you're in the follow-up phase, which is really prioritizing the opportunities, making sure that you have approvals, whether they're no-cost or low-cost initiatives, and then ultimately implementing them and then communicating the outcomes. And one of the greatest parts, I would say, about Treasure Hunt, maybe not the greatest, but a really great part, especially in today's world where we're still dealing with the effects of COVID, almost every phase of the treasure hunt can be done virtually. So you can do every phase except essentially the hunt and the implementation of the project via a WebEx or a Zoom like we're doing right now, and get pretty much every piece done. And with Energy Star, they actually even put together some COVID guidelines for the Energy Star treasure hunts that can also be downloaded. I know we're obviously all dealing with a lot of scrutiny on having a lot of third-party vendors come to sites, and it's really a priority to make sure that our residents feel safe within our communities. So I think this is a fantastic time to take the treasure hunt resources and really try it out at your own properties to identify efficiency measures internally. And so, like I mentioned throughout the presentation, there really are several ways you can go about identifying opportunities. You can use external vendors, you can do it completely internally, or a combination of the two. But really, regardless of which route you take, I would say that the two most important pieces to us and our program is, one, having the data and making sure that you're consistently monitoring that. And then two, the engagement piece, making sure you're engaging all of your stakeholders throughout the process to really ensure success. And with that, I will pass it over to Pete. Thank you guys so much.
With Bozzuto Management Company here, VP of Sustainability. Again, excited to be here, excited to share our experiences with this great Energy Star tool. And although, Lexi and our companies are technically competitors, I, always relish this opportunity to come together and share ideas and best practices and how we are both kind of tackling, these issues within our companies. So right off the bat, if a quick slide on Bozzuto. If you're unfamiliar, we are, like Graystar, a fully integrated company. I work primarily on the management company. Currently 260 plus communities across or up and down the East Coast and out towards Chicago, almost 80,000 units. Bunch of retail. We are primarily third-party fee managers, so we have 80 plus different ownership groups that we manage their assets for, from institutional investment funds down to more regional, local mom and pop, for lack of a better term, owners and developers of multifamily and mixed-use apartment communities. Primarily market rate, primarily on the higher end, Class A plus, and which presents its own unique opportunities and challenges around high performance buildings and operations. Most notably, I'll share something I'm particularly proud of. We are a 4-time Energy Star Partner of the Year award winner, and have really loved working with Energy Star and the incredible tools and resources that they have put out there for everyone's use. So just quickly, a couple of commitments that our company has made. We have committed to 3% energy reduction year over year across our entire managed portfolio. Certainly a challenge not only to keep track of, but to keep moving in the right direction. We have achieved this several years in a row now. We've achieved over 90 Energy Star certifications since it first became available to multifamily in 2015. And we're really big on resident engagement and education as a key component of those energy commitments. So you can read these here. I'll skip over these in the interest of time. Our approach, like many of the things, the tools and resources that Energy Star has out there for organizations like ours to review and take advantage of, we have a history of kind of taking their resources and kind of adapting to our business, which is certainly what we've done here with the treasure hunt. We're really looking to see how we can take something like this and automate it and replicate it. Like Lexi, we have a fairly large company, 2,700 employees, and lots of different asset types and regions and that sort of thing. So how do we take this kind of toolkit and adapt it and make it applicable to a wide array of properties and to make it easy to use for anyone coming into this. So that touches on it being easy to use, easy to understand, which I think the toolkit absolutely as it exists today on the Energy Star website already is very much kind of in that realm. And the solution for us, the timing was really great that we had just launched a property software, a multifamily performance management software platform in our company, and we saw the opportunity to make this to convert the treasure hunt to essentially a quarterly inspection. Per our management agreements and commitments, we do 4 quarterly inspections of our communities each year. 2 of those are very heavily focused on O&M. One is focused on primarily safety, and we saw this as an excellent opportunity to make essentially a high performance quarterly inspection, and I'll go into that in a moment. And also, we were able to, in the software platform, and I'll show in a second, kind of reinforce the key principles of the treasure hunt and high performance building operations into more frequently completed and required tasks of on-site teams, and not only just maintenance, so sales and leasing, property managers, et cetera. And on the quarterly inspection that we adapted the treasure hunt from, we do have regional senior maintenance team members involved, so they bring not only their expertise but experience and from other different assets within our portfolio to these communities. So it's a learning opportunity as well for everyone involved. So this is a screen grab of a customized workflow that we built in our platform. It's called Leonardo 24/7, and it's a platform that's not only a desktop web-based solution, but it also has a smartphone app, so that in the foreground there you can see a screen grab of the treasure hunt audit, which is what we called it, in that platform. So it's a customized workflow. We can launch it at any time, so whether it's part of the quarterly inspection or certainly it can be advanced for budgetary purposes, for putting budgets together, or a client's ESG commitments, or what have you. So just an example of that there. And what we end up with once we complete a this inspection is a report. So we, back in December, did our first one at a property that we manage in DC with a client who is a REIT, who is a very, has some pretty aggressive ESG commitments around energy and water performance and efficiency and stuff like that. And so we worked with them on an initial run through of this. And so we ended up with a 5-page report after a 2 or 3 hour inspection with a team of about 10 people that was broken into 2 groups. And we essentially walked the building from top to bottom, roof to basement, garages, exterior, interior common area, vacant units, model units, what have you, and came out with this report, which turned into a list of recommendations that we then presented to ownership. And some were, behavioral, some were very low cost and easy to do, and some were, essentially presented as future budget considerations. One thing that we're big on, and I think most people are in our world of property management, our site teams love recognition for their efforts and something that they can put on a desk in the lobby or what have you. So we were able to share this and have it posted on the Energy Star website. We have a certificate and made sure to show it on social media with the whole team who conducted the audit, and tag the property and that sort of thing. So something to consider. Make it something to celebrate. One of the key things that we really focused on was, we are not launching this this Energy Star high performance inspection as a gotcha exercise. This is not trying to catch anyone doing bad things. This is a collaborative opportunity to really do a deep dive into these components of your community to do a thorough scrub and understand where those opportunities lie, and how we can tweak operations and future decisions. So lessons learned. Again, don't hesitate to look at the treasure hunt guidelines. If it's not an exact fit for you, consider how you might be able to apply it to your property or organization or what have you. One of the things that we learned right off the bat was we broke into 2 different teams, and essentially we duplicated each other's efforts because we were looking at similar space types and stuff like that. So consider does it make sense to break it apart by system or by space type, depending on the individual assets and your teams and how you might track and record this. Again, divide and conquer or all for one, depending on the size of your asset and how much time you have. It might make sense to have separate teams go out and do this first, or have everyone do it. And as Lexi touched on, don't hesitate to this isn't just a maintenance opportunity. So we had property managers, sales and leasing folks, folks that are walking the building every day, and their perspectives and observations are certainly invaluable and important to consider. So as I shared before, deliverables and follow-up, consider what your deliverable and what this inspection is going to lead to. It's going to be different for Bozzuto than it is to Greystar than it is to anyone on this webinar today. And we certainly had an eye, kept in mind how we might tee observations and opportunities up for approval as we were walking, because again, this is a third-party managed community is owned by someone other than Bozzuto. So anything that we presented would need to be approved for implementation. So we have a goal in mind. We zeroed in on this particular property in DC, not only because of the owner's commitments, but knowing that DC has some pretty heavy duty and aggressive energy ordinances coming into place for building energy performance standards. So there's a number of things to keep in mind as you launch this at your properties. Certainly the resident experience. What can we do to engage and educate residents as part of this? One of the things that we identified in this particular community was deactivating amenity spaces, yoga rooms and club rooms that are, every single TV is on and every light is on and, they're air conditioned with no one in them. Can we have those deactivated and have that part of, a prospect walks in? These areas aren't on, and here's why. It's because we care, and this is what we're committed to. So, and I'm sure we'll get into the COVID impact, but we have essentially stalled on this for now because we are, as Lex alluded to earlier, we are not bringing in third parties. We're kind of on a holding pattern on lots of projects and kind of non-pandemic response activities right now. So for a number of reasons other than the obvious ones, eager to get back to normal here so we can implement this in full across our portfolio. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Pete. Thanks so much, Lexi.